Hi, my name is Bente, I'm the Norse Witch, and welcome to another personal Q&A session. If you have been following this channel for quite some time, you may know that I do these quite regularly to kind of keep in touch with everyone who's new, so everyone gets the chance to ask any questions that they might feel the need to ask. So without further ado, let's dive into the questions. I'm starting with the Instagram questions and then afterwards I'm going over to YouTube. So let's see what we have here. What was your personal favorite part about your finding with the pagan path? So I guess my favorite part about becoming a pagan, I think it is the way that I fell in love with the land that I'm living on. Because prior to becoming a heathen and a witch, I didn't give a single flying shit about nature. I didn't really give a single flying shit about the country that I was living on. I was kind of disenchanted with the land that I was living on. Developing a closer connection with it, I really fell in love with it. And I think this connection that I have now, like, I couldn't imagine my life without it, but I was pretty much without it prior to becoming a witch. It was miserable. I was like very much a very nihilistic, is that how you pronounce it in English? A nihilistic person, and just a very, in general, pessimistic, nihilistic, negative person. I have found so much joy and love for the land I'm living on. That's my favorite part. I don't really give a fuck about like being able to manipulate reality or being able to cast spells or whatever, but just like I have gained so much quality in life through it. So honestly, that part. What are you most looking forward to right now? My brain is pretty much filled with renovation stuff, house stuff, and I think the two things I am most excited about is, first of all, finally getting started on the garden. So I'm actually at the moment doing heavy research on how to create a garden that is very good for the environment, that includes a lot of little spaces for little critters, creating a very natural pond situation, like a little biotope situation, hideaway spots for amphibia and for hedgehogs and everything. I'm very excited about also adopting runner ducks. We will for sure get runner ducks because we have so many slugs around here that will destroy our plants. And we are going to adopt some runner ducks, so the entire garden situation. 2026 will be heavy around garden stuff. We kind of said that we will continue to renovate inside the house when the weather is bad, and every time the weather is nice, we will do garden stuff. So I'm excited about the garden, but also about finally starting renovations on our bathroom, because we currently have two bathrooms, a very, very big one downstairs and a very tiny one upstairs. Currently we only use the upstairs one, but we will have to get rid of it so that there's enough space for my fiance's office, and we will renovate the big one. It's huge. We have a lot planned. It will be a lot of work and a lot of money. I already invested a lot of money in it, but I think once it's done, it will be so beautiful. It will be kind of like a very earthy, natural spa situation, and I'm very excited about that. So those two things for sure. Is asatru inherently white supremacist? How do your practices refute blood and soil? No, it's for sure not inherently white supremacist, and there is no reason why it would be. It's just being misappropriated by white supremacists and neo-Nazis. I mean, that started way back. That already started with like romanticism and with people during the industrialization trying to romanticize their pagan past. That just culminated in the Third Reich. Hitler didn't really have anything to do with it, but Himmler had a lot to do with it. He was very much into like paganism and stuff like that. That's nowadays where the inspiration for that came from, and I'm very sad about that because I mean it came from my country, so that's very sad. Obviously I am a person on the internet. I speak openly on the internet about my practice, and I am a hardcore inclusive heathen. One of the most important things right now is that we openly speak up against it, because white supremacists in Norse pagan spaces are very loud, and it can be very exhausting to go against that and to speak up against that, but I think it's extremely important to do that and trying to educate people and to kind of refute the claims that white supremacists make. I really want to make more like tiny little reels that kind of refute single points that these white supremacist Norse pagans make. I recently started doing that. I just try to openly educate about it because honestly, there are so many inclusive heathens out there, but none of them are openly practicing on the internet. So what you see most of is those nasty white supremacist folkish heathens online, because those are very loud. But the good ones usually don't. So I think it's very, very important that more people are open about it. And I know at the moment that can be very hard, but I think it's very important to do so. And I am very safe in Germany, so I can openly care about it without the fear of being like prosecuted for it or whatever. Because at least we still, and especially me as a white person, I am pretty secure in Germany when it comes to religious freedom. I have the privilege to speak up about it, so I do. Do you sometimes work with deities from non-Norse pantheons? No. And I don't really feel the desire to either. So I only really felt a desire to do so with 2 deities. And the first one was Nyx. I don't actually know how to properly pronounce her name, but that was one deity that I was very interested in once. And Pan. Pan is such an interesting deity, but like I wouldn't really work with any other deities. What is the most satisfying thing of being a heathen? There's a lot of frustrating things about being a heathen, but I think it's similar to the part of being a pagan that I love most. I think heathenry, even though it's kind of represented differently oftentimes, I think heathenry is very, very earth-based. I know that those like Viking bro heathens won't really like that because they're all about the like, oh, Viking age, war and battle and whatever, like all of those like typical Viking bro things. But I think heathenry, if you actually do your research, you will quickly find out how earth-based it is, how important the connection to the land you live on is, how important your ancestors are. And I think that's what I very much like about it, that it just integrates very much into your practice if you already have a deep connection to the land you live on and the spirits in the landscape, of course. Are you happy in your house and the changes it brought into your life? I am very, very happy in this house. It's so nice and quiet now that I actually got used to living in the countryside and it being so quiet. I just instantly get like overstimulated when I go to big cities, which is very interesting because that makes me realize how exhausted I always was, but I never realized it was because of all of the noise and all of the people around me. So I am very, very happy in this house. The renovations usually come out pretty well. I'm very happy with how much we already accomplished. I'm excited about all of the things that we are still going to renovate, even though it's a lot of work and just very energy draining if you do that while also having a full-time job. I'm very, very happy we moved here, and especially also that we moved to this house. Even though the previous owners did a lot of questionable things renovation-wise, we always find things that we are removing where we're like, what the fuck is going on here? And sometimes we have to kind of work around it, which means that we cannot always renovate the way that you should, simply because the previous owners did things in very questionable ways. But I mean, I think that's just life in an old house, right? But I really like living in an old house. Like, I love our old doors, even though they're very crooked. One of them doesn't even properly close anymore, but I like it. I think our house is insanely cute. So yeah, I'm very happy with the decision. Do you take medicine for your ADHD? I'm scared to try it, to be honest. This far I don't, but I for sure want to try. Not even necessarily for the ADHD symptoms themselves, because I kind of feel like, because I went 31 years undiagnosed, I kind of hacked my ADHD system in some ways, so I can work around it pretty well. So I wouldn't necessarily need it for the ADHD symptoms themselves, but I suspect that my migraine has something to do, or my migraines have something to do with the ADHD. That happens for a lot of people, or neurodivergent people in general, not just people with ADHD. What I really want to try is whether I get less migraines if I take the ADHD medication. I totally see that I frequently get migraine attacks after I have been exposed to anything that is overstimulating. So I'm like, okay, if I take ADHD medication and that maybe prevents me from getting overstimulated as easily, maybe that will lead to me getting less migraines. And that would be nice because at the moment I get migraines at least once a week, so that knocks me out for an entire day and I have to take a lot of pain medication. And that is not very good for your body. I would rather take ADHD medications than pain medications because I don't want to run into a situation where I need pain medication and it doesn't really work anymore. That would suck. So I actually do have an appointment, I think in March, with my neurologist. I luckily already have one because of my migraines, and I will talk with my doctor about that. I will bring my diagnosis and then hopefully I won't have to do another assessment because I was diagnosed by a psychotherapist and not by my psychiatrist. And sometimes, like I heard that if you go to your psychiatrist with a diagnosis you got from a psychotherapist, that they want to do another assessment. I hope I won't have to do that, but if I have to, then so be it. Do you think working with figures like Krampus is silly? Honestly, no. I think there's so much validity in folkloric witchcraft and being inspired by folklore. I am very much inspired by folklore. I haven't really tried to work with figures like Krampus, for example, because that's not a thing in northern Germany. But I mean, for example, Nispuk, Nisse, Tomte, those typical house spirits in northern Germany and Scandinavia, those are huge in folklore. So you could kind of equate that. I do very, very valid work with our house spirit, and it is very much validated by folklore. So our house spirit does behave in the way that I would expect from a Nispuk, for example. I think it's totally valid to work with folklore. Also, one of the trees around here, I once posted a photo of it on Instagram. That tree, I only figured out that this tree even exists through folklore. One single story. And that is such an amazing tree spirit. I really desperately want to go back and do more work with it. So for sure, there's so much validity to that. Is the rest of the world actually saying what's happening in Minnesota and that people are protesting and doing mutual aid to care for neighbors? That came from someone from St. Paul. I don't know how it is for other people. I own a TV, but I don't watch normal cable TV. So I don't necessarily know what the news are saying in Germany about it overall. I see a lot of it, but that may also be because my algorithm just feeds me a lot of American reels. So that may be why I'm seeing a lot of it and I'm fucking horrified. So that may just be my personal algorithm. At least I know that, for example, my coworkers know about it. So I'm guessing that it is in the normal German news. But in general, people are talking a lot about what's going on more generally in the US, because that's like everybody's talking about that. That's everywhere. Can't really go anywhere without it coming up because it's just horrid. Is there any denomination of Norse paganism that is more focused on orthodoxy instead of praxis? I would think so. I don't know a lot of people who do that, but I would guess. But of course, I don't know every single heathen, and heathens aren't necessarily that well connected globally, but I'm guessing that exists somewhere, yes. What locations, sites, or events are on your witchcraft travel bucket list? Okay, of course, like top tier was always Iceland, but now Sweden and Norway, of course. I really want to still go back to Copenhagen. I just love Copenhagen. I want to go back again. I would really like to visit Lejre in Denmark. That would be amazing. I would really love to go to the, what is it called? The historical festival in Bilka. That would be amazing. I would love to go there at some point. Also the sorcery festival in Iceland. That would be amazing. I would love to go to Salem Witchcraft and Folklore Festival, like in person. That would be so great, but I really don't want to go to the US right now. So that's out of the question. But I think those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. Favorite comfort anime, TV or film? I'm not really an anime person. I don't really watch any anime, but comfort TV shows and movies, I do have quite a lot. I'm that kind of person who rewatches the same things over and over and over again. When it comes to TV shows, Friends for sure. I love Golden Girls. I love Gossip Girl. I know it's kind of stupid, but it's kind of like a teenage memory, just like Twilight. Like Twilight isn't necessarily a good movie, I know that, but it's a teenage memory, so it's still a comfort movie of mine. The Devil Wears Prada, for example. What else are comfort movies? I have so many, but I can't remember right now. Mamma Mia, also not necessarily the most challenging movie, but it's for sure a comfort movie for me. It's kind of lighthearted, so I like that. But that's why I don't like the second part. If you know, you know. But I do have quite a lot of TV shows and movies, I just can't think of a lot of them right now. But Friends is for sure like on top. Even though if you watch it now, it's very obviously not politically correct in a lot of ways. There are a lot of older shows that are much worse than Friends is, but you still see how it is a product of its time. If you can't watch shows that aren't politically correct by today's standards, then you shouldn't watch Friends. After living in a house for a bit, are you a countryside or a city person? That is such a good question. I had always lived in cities. Like, I was born in a city, raised in a city, then I moved from the smaller city that I grew up in, moved to Berlin, lived there for a year, moved to Hamburg, which is I think the second largest city in Germany, lived there for 10 years in and around Hamburg, and now I live in the countryside. I haven't lived in the countryside for more than a year, and I have to also add to that the information that I don't have a driver's license. That, of course, living in the countryside without a driver's license comes with its struggles. I am kind of isolated here because I live too far away from friends and family to come over all the time, and I don't have a driver's license. So while I am able to go some places by train, we don't have any buses here that are anywhere near our house. So I always have to walk to the train station for 25 minutes, and then from there I can access other cities around here. But it's of course nothing like living in Hamburg and having everything just a foot walk away, maybe 13 minutes away. I mean, back then, when I lived in Hamburg, my workplace, my office was 30 minutes away by foot. My pole studio was 30 minutes away by foot. I could access any kinds of shops that I really needed within like 5 to 10 minutes by foot. I had amazing restaurants 5 to 10 minutes by foot from me. I had everything around me. Now I have the basic amenities around me, but even if I wanted to go grocery shopping by myself, I would have to go by bike. So that is a little bit of a struggle. I still have to get used to that. And that's also why I will get my driver's license this year. I will not get a full driver's license. My plan is that I will get a small driver's license for a little scooter. I don't know how it is in other countries, but in Germany we have different classes of driver's licenses with which you can drive different kinds of vehicles. So I don't want to get a full driver's license for a full-on car. You can get the smaller driver's license for scooters, and then there are they look like cars, but like tiny cars, and they are so lightweight that they are kind of classified with scooters. So you can drive them with a scooter, but they look kind of like a car. They're kind of like a small electric car, and I want to get one of those. They're kind of expensive, and you can only drive 45 kilometers per hour with them, so you can't go everywhere with them. But I do have quite a lot of anxiety around cars, and we got into quite a lot of very panic-inducing situations in traffic in the last year. I had my first panic attack in the car last year, so I really don't want to get a full driver's license. Like, I don't want to drive a normal car. No. I just want to be able to go small distances, like just being able to drive to the train, for example, or just drive to the next city over, or be able to drive to the grocery store or something like that. Because if I am able to do that, then I will feel less isolated, and that will be nice. But apart from that, I feel much more at ease and much more at home here in the countryside, simply because it's much more quiet. There is not people around at all times, every single day. I did live in a place where I literally had people walk in front of my windows all the time. So that was just insanely stressful. I was overstimulated constantly, and now I just have much more energy. I'm much more motivated to do stuff simply because my body isn't in constant fight or flight mode. So that's nice. So I would say once I am less isolated here, I will for sure be more of a countryside person. Do you have a favorite rune and why? Do I have a favorite rune? I like Sovilo simply because I like the sun so much. And I kind of like how Perdo is like so mysterious. I like that. I also kind of like Gera simply because it's so nature oriented. If I had to say it off the top of my head, I think those, but don't quote me on that. How can I start ancestor work if I don't really know my culture? For context, I'm from the US, and I know my genetic background on my dad's side is Scottish and Hungarian, but I can't find many valid sources on folk magic or folk practices. Not to mention most of my family is Christian, and I know nothing of my mom's background other than family recipes from my great-grandma. Okay, first of all, family recipes are already amazing, because that means you already have a perfect starting point for offerings. Family recipes, cook those for your ancestors. Perfect offerings for ancestors. Apart from that, okay, if you struggle with like your family background and everything like that, you don't necessarily have to start your ancestor work off with your family. There are also ancestors that have nothing to do with your family. For example, people that really inspire you, or people that are very important in your community. For example, if you're queer, then you can add people to your ancestor veneration practice that were notable figures in the queer community. There are also ancestors of the land that you live on, so there are a lot of different kinds of ancestors. Let's just start with that. You don't necessarily have to get started with your familial ancestors. If you want to do so though, honestly, I think food is a great start, because if you already know that you are Scottish Hungarian, you can totally dive into the cultural food from those countries. That can be a great start, because that way you already have like a starting off point. You can start giving those kinds of offerings and then see how your ancestors react to that. Give the offering, go into meditation, and then try to figure out if that is appreciated or not. I would guess that it is much appreciated. So that is a great starting off point. You don't necessarily have to figure everything out about the culture that your ancestors were from. If you can find out some things, that's great. But if you cannot find anything out, that's not necessarily the biggest problem. You can totally give these kinds of cultural food offerings and then call on your ancestors and then see who comes through and see whom you can communicate with. And from that point on, you can figure out a lot of the stuff with them. You don't have to figure everything out by yourself. The thing that a lot of people always forget is that we can actually communicate. So we can ask for information from our ancestors. We can ask for what they would like as offerings. We can ask about where we should look for information. We can ask them what they would like to have on their altars. There's also, if your entire family is and was Christian, there is nothing wrong with bringing Christian elements into your ancestor work if that feels okay for you. Of course, if you have like Christian trauma or for whatever reason you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. But you can for sure, because if your ancestors were Christian and you know that, why not dive into that? If you personally knew any of your ancestors, that's also a great starting off point, because then you probably know what they liked, what kind of people they were. So that way you don't have to necessarily know anything about your cultural background. If you ever felt hit with any semblance of imposter syndrome, how did you handle it? All the time, literally all the time. Just imagine you're a person sharing very vulnerable stuff about your religion and your witchcraft practice online. Just imagine what kinds of comments you get from people. Of course, that will spark a lot of imposter syndrome. Also, I'm a people pleaser, so that makes it even worse. And yeah, I don't necessarily have a lot of self-confidence to begin with. I get hit with it quite a lot, especially now that I wrote a book. That made me feel like such an imposter. I was kind of like, who am I to write a book on this, you know? I've never written anything, so who am I to do this? I actually made a video on it. It's, I think, the only video that I ever made where I nearly started crying because I just felt like shit. How do I handle it? I try to ignore it. I think that's really the only thing you can do, is just try to ignore it and still do what you want to do. For me personally, at least, imposter syndrome feels a lot just like fear, just like my anxiety. And the only thing you can really do to get rid of that anxiety is by confronting yourself with the things you are afraid of. So I try to just ignore the feeling, and I know that's easier said than done. I'm still a person who avoids a lot of things because I get anxious, but in the end, confrontation therapy is really the only thing you can do. So I just try to ignore it the best I can until it gets to a point where I can't ignore it anymore, and then just try to really breathe through it. Just try to not let it stop you. I think that's probably where I'm getting at. I would love to know your thoughts about love magic in the Scandinavian folk tradition, as well as in general. There's so much content made about prosperity and protection, but not so much about love and attraction. Not self-love or glamour magic, and not targeting a specific person, more like attracting your ideal partner. Thank you. Most of what I know about specifically love magic in Trolldom is actually usually about targeting a specific person, and a lot of it is about getting someone to sleep with you or getting someone to be obsessed with you. And a lot of it is like feeding someone your urine or feeding someone your menstrual blood or stuff like that, or feeding someone something. So a lot of it is actually about targeting a specific person. I don't really think people hundreds of years ago really thought about it being morally very dark gray, let's say it like that, to target a specific person with a spell. I don't really think people were too concerned about that. Most of what you will find on love spells, or at least older love spells, will be things that target a specific person, because a lot of people were just concerned with getting someone into bed. Or of course, a lot of women were concerned about keeping their husband, because of course they were very dependent on them. Historically, women were 100% dependent on their husband because they couldn't earn their own money, for example, they couldn't vote. So it was very important for them to keep their husband, to get them to stay loyal to them. Magic was also used for that, to kind of bind your partner to you because you were dependent on them. So yeah, long story short, a lot of the spells you will find will just be about that, to get someone to be obsessed with you or to sleep with you. And I don't really know a lot of spells. I think I know nothing about any spells that are more like about attracting your ideal partner. I think those will probably be more modern witchcraft and less older folk magic. What is a benefit to your practice and a detriment to your practice that has come from YouTube popularity? A lot of it is community related, because a benefit to my practice being public on YouTube was that I got to know a lot of other practitioners, and that was amazing. A lot of them are either on my Patreon or my YouTube membership or other creators. That is also the detriment, I think. If I wanted to be a part of a local community now, although let me rephrase it. In Germany, I think that would be less of a problem because I'm making English content. So Germans don't necessarily always know my content, but a lot of people, a lot of English-speaking people or international people know my content. So if I wanted to enter like a local community somewhere in the US, let's say, or in the UK, then I would have, I think, a problem at some points, because people do develop parasocial relationships with you if you are a creator. That's unavoidable. I also do that with other creators. That's just what happens. The problem is, though, that some people will kind of idolize you, and that makes it hard to actually develop a proper friendship with people because they put you on a pedestal. If you have ever met me in person, like I'm an extremely low-key person. I don't feel comfortable with being put on a pedestal. So if I wanted to join a community with a person in that community that knows my channel, I think that would make me a little bit uncomfortable, because I wouldn't know what they actually think of me, because of course they already know me and I don't know them. So that's a little bit of a struggle, and if you already have social anxiety, that doesn't make things easier. So I was very happy when last year I joined a local heathen community. I was very happy that none of them knew who I was. That was so nice, because I could just be Bente instead of being the Norse witch. I kind of feel like that is a little bit of a detriment, but on the other side, again, I got to know so many amazing people that I can talk to about witchcraft and heathenry that I wouldn't have gotten to know otherwise. And if you know anything about the German community is always a few steps behind the English-speaking community when it comes to being more politically correct, let's say it like that, and being more educated on topics like cultural appropriation and things like that. So if I would join a German community, I don't know if it would necessarily be the right fit for me. So it was only really through my channel that I got to know so many people that I actually vibe with, you know? So that was amazing. Also, it forced me to do a lot of research that I maybe wouldn't have done otherwise, which is great, because the more research you do, the more knowledgeable you are, deeper you can go. I kind of feel like I got much deeper with my practice through my channel. That was also nice. But that's a very, very good question, because few people actually think of the disadvantages of having a channel and being a public person. Are you doing a video about your garden plants? I already did. I will link it. What keeps you motivated in your craft? After the holidays, I feel drained, but still want to make sure I am still making time for intentional witchy moments. The fact that it is so tied to the land I'm living on, because that way my practice actually shifts with the seasons. So that way I always do something new every season, and I think that really helps. Also, giving myself ample time for breaks and to do literally nothing. All right, but I think that's enough questions answered. Thank you everyone so much for your questions. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe and give a thumbs up and hype the video. and ring the bell down below so that you're notified whenever I upload a new video. If you want to keep up with my more private shenanigans, then check out my Instagram. And if you want to support this channel, then you can check out my Patreon or my YouTube membership. And I will see you in another video. Bye!